I also have the.
Oh.
Okay, she found now we are recording, folks, so be careful what you say. It'll be there forever. Your great grandchildren can look up and see what you said about the butterflies. All right. Now, for everybody else that's tuning in, that's not here, we had a little technical problem because Melanie was away and Rima gallantly figured out how to do this. It's not so easy. All righty. I'm hoping we might have switched topics. At one point in my old list, I had bugs for today, but we're doing bugs next time. And we're doing butterflies in your garden today. Grow your own. Some of you may say, I thought this was mostly about vegetables. Well, it is, mostly. However, butterflies not only are beautiful, but they are pollinators, which we need. I mentioned, I think a time or two ago, almost half of the veggies and fruits you eat, if it weren't for the bees and the butterflies, other pollinators, you'd be out there with the paintbrush doing the pollinating on your hands and knees. You would not like that, all that free labor. And the butterflies are part of that. So I thought we'd just take a sidestep this week, and all the butterflies are showing up in the garden. Rima, have you seen any in your garden?
Yes.
What have you seen? Uh-oh, I put them on the spot without any warning. Pop out questions.
Little orange ones.
Little orange
and
ones.
black.
Like how little? An inch across, 2 inches?
Inch across.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not monarchs. I wish.
No. Probably skippers. First of all, I'm not a butterfly expert. I do know something about the 13 that I've identified in my garden, but that does not include the little orange and black ones that are probably skippers or coppers.
Oh.
So we won't talk about them. Regina's over here in the corner. What kind of, have you been seeing any butterflies?
Yes,
And
I
speak
have
up.
lately.
So
Yes, I have. I don't know what kind they are, but I had a big one yesterday or the day before.
Ooh.
Big yellow and black.
yes, the swallowtails, the tiger
Oh.
swallowtails.
Oh, they're so
And,
pretty.
I don't know. I've had some other ones.
Okay, so maybe after this program, you'll recognize a few. All righty. I'm going to start out now. Can we enlarge the caterpillar there? And I'm going to embarrass myself because I used to know what that was. Oh, it's a black swallowtail caterpillar.
So this is you right here.
Yeah, I
I don't
know.
know how to.
You know not.
I don't know how to get
Okay.
you out of there, Mary Lou.
All right. Am I going to be there the whole time?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we have some technical flukes this time. We'll have to deal with it. Usually the butterflies are in the middle, so it won't matter.
Okay.
All righty. My point being, we all love the butterflies. I don't know of anybody that doesn't like butterflies. But as gardeners, we tend not to like many of their caterpillars because why? The caterpillars eat leaves on our plants. However, in life, there's no black and white. Everything's a shade of gray. And if you want the butterflies, you have to really cut back on your spraying, maybe not 100%, but really cut back on it and be judicious when you use it and what you use so that the caterpillars survive to make your butterflies. Okay. All righty. With that said.
But not all caterpillars become butterflies, do they?
All butterflies have to go through 4 stages. Eggs laid by the adult butterfly,
Yeah. Okay.
then the caterpillar, and then the
Pupae or something.
pupae. Is that how you? I was never studied Latin, and I never know how to pronounce it. Or cocoon, but I think
There you go.
pupae is right. Cocoon, and then the butterfly. 4 very different life forms, but it's all the same thing. So, okay, let's look at our. What I did was I live outside of Alfred at about 2,240 feet up above the village. So, and I have meadows in front and a deciduous woods behind me. So these are the butterflies I'm familiar with. As I said, I'm not an expert on butterflies. So let's take a look at our first one. And this goes roughly by when you'll see them in the season. There are finding number one. Somewhere is number one. Sometimes you push this one and it
Yeah, that's
jumps
what
to
I
the
did,
next,
and it didn't.
and it didn't.
Come on, little fella.
Well, while Rima is struggling with how to get to number two,
Oh, is it this?
there
Ta-da!
it is. Love, she found it. All righty. Okay. This is a morning cloak. And I thought, Rima, before you go, what do I do to get to the next picture?
Well, I'm just gonna see if this is showing up on my
Okay, but
computer.
then it's this one, right? To go to the next?
Yeah, you click on that little,
Oh, the green thing?
yeah, you use this to click on that.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I think you can do it here too, but. All right, we'll leave the morning cloak up while Rima checks to see if it's going through everybody else. It's not spelled M-O-R-N like A-M. It's mourning, M-O-U-R-N-I-G, meaning grieving. And it goes back to the Victorian times in England when the men, remember in the day when a close one died, you went into mourning for a year and you tended to wear dark clothing. I don't think people do that anymore, but they used to. And the men had a cloak that they would wear, which was dark brown with a creamy colored trim on the bottom. So the morning cloak looks like the morning cloak, and that's where it got its English nickname. And we're not going to the Latin because I can't pronounce it.
Oh, but that's memorable, though. I'll always remember that.
Yeah, you'll always remember. Now, the other thing to remember about this butterfly is it's one of the few, if not the only one, that hibernates over the winter here in Allegheny County as an adult butterfly. As an adult butterfly. And what it does is it wiggles its way into the cracks in the woods. And so if the temperature, and now in the old days, this was rare, but now it's not so rare. In January, February, you might have a warm spell and the sun is out and it gets up into the 40s. One years ago, I was working in the woods and I saw a flutter off and so what's that? Well, it was two morning cloaks in the middle of February with the snow on the ground, fluttering around. So I think that's, if you want to remember something interesting about these different butterflies, that to me is something interesting. All righty, let's go on to the next one. Okay, these are examples of blue Azuras. We don't have to be particular. There are several species. These are very early, sometimes late April, early May, and they're only about an inch across. And the top part of their wings is this lovely blue color, which is pretty obvious as they flip past. The undersides look quite different, more of a silvery gray. Now, maybe you guys will know, birds have broods. What do butterflies have? Hatches? I think. So if that's correct terminology, the blue Azura, since it comes out so early, can have 3 hatches in a summertime, spring, summer, early fall. And what to me, studying science as well as art, is that the ones early in the spring and late in the fall, when the weather is cooler, are darker blue. Just, we won't go into it, but also that's true with certain flowers that bloom all summer long. They're most intense in the spring and in the fall. When the weather is cool, they tend to be more faded in the heat of summer. All righty, now number 3 and 4. Let's look at 3 first. Okay, our tiger swallowtail.
Oh, beautiful.
Which, let me think now here. Yes, this is what we often see, and it's big. It's 4 inches, usually shows up around Memorial Day, maybe a little earlier now because of global warming. And it's big and it's obvious and it's beautiful. The interesting thing about the yellow swallowtail is that some of the females are dark. Now there's another species, the black swallowtail, and it's not them, but it's a dark black version of this, which I think is really interesting. And I don't know why. I haven't done enough reading to know why that is the case.
Is that the only butterfly that has two different colors?
I don't know.
Oh,
Of the ones I'm covering, I think so.
you know, I never thought about that with butterflies before. They have different colors for the same kind, like birds are so different, you know?
Right. Okay, think of our squirrels.
Mhm.
Most of our gray squirrels are gray, but there's a melon version, which is a charcoal, almost a black. And they, for instance, if you go up to Toronto,
Yeah.
in the city of Toronto, they're all dark, 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 dark.
Oh,
And then, of
silver.
course, you know what
silver lake.
albinos are.
Yeah.
So this, I'm guessing, but I'm not sure. If anybody out there is listening, let us know if you're a Lepidopterist. Is that the word for people who
That
study
sounds right.
butterflies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lepidoptera.
One of those long words.
Uh-huh.
I'm guessing it has something to do with that, a
Mhm.
color change, but I don't know why. Now, many butterflies, if you look at them from the top down, this is what they look like. Let's see our next slide, because once again, the bottom of the wings, in a sense, are different. So, but once again, a big, beautiful butterfly.
Wow.
Something interesting, several male butterflies, different species, but especially the swallowtails here. The males like to do something called puddling. Anybody know what puddling is?
Yeah, they congregate around a mud puddle.
Okay, they congregate around a mud puddle and they suck up the moisture from the mud puddle or a dung pile.
And it also includes nutrients, doesn't it?
And it includes nutrients. Yep. Okay, we can move on now to some 5 and 6. Really? 5 and 6.
There's 5.
Oh, right. I was jumping ahead. This is a different species, the black swallowtail. And then the next slide shows what its underwings look like, which is quite different
Oh, wow.
in a sense. But look at that body, the
Orange.
black with the white dots. Could we go back? Let's see what the body on the yellow swallowtail looks like. No, one more. Okay, the yellow swallowtail, the body is yellow with that black sort of a band of beads down the length of it. And what's the black swallowtail's body look like? Jump forward to black with white spots. So if you're close enough to see the body, you can tell whether it's a female, black, yellow, yeah, yellow one, or a real black one. So anyway, these are all fairly good sized, 3 to 4 inches in diameter. They're very obvious. Now, the interesting one is next. Okay, get to the next one, Marina, before you go. Oh, wait a minute, back up. Maybe I don't have it. Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah. One day, 5 years ago, in the summer, I saw what was obviously a swallowtail. Look at the tails at the end of the wings there. Out in my herb garden, but something was wrong. First of all, it seemed bigger. And it didn't have that yellow-black pattern. It had much more yellow and brown. This one looks a little different than the one I saw. But think of the yellowtail, swallowtail, but with more brown on it and bigger. And I went out and I thought, what is that? And for once, the butterfly book actually identified it for me. Anybody that's a bird watcher, all those little brown birds, and you're trying to figure out which one it is, sometimes you just can't do it. So I was amazed that that is definitely a giant swallowtail. And then the book I had, if you buy either bird or butterfly identification books, always get the ones where somewhere there's a map of the US with the range of the bird or the butterfly. For the birds, it's usually, is it here all the time? Is it a summer bird? Is it a winter visitor? And it's blue, green, or whatever, yellow. So this butterfly book showed the range. And this giant swallowtail's northern limit was the New York State, Pennsylvania line.
Oh, wow.
So until global warming happened, and we're getting warmer up here, butterflies, kudzu, ticks, Japanese beetles, all those guys are moving north. And I haven't seen one since in 5 years, but that giant swallowtail showed up in its northernmost part of its range. So I thought that was really interesting. Okay, now we can go to number 8.
Whoops,
What
that's
now?
number 9.
Yeah, can we go back to 8? Okay, so, things are out of order. Okay, let's go to what we had.
Number 9?
See, what happened was when I had my paper copy printed out from
Oh.
the PowerPoint, somehow the computer decided to muck it up and put things out of order. I thought I had my list in order, but obviously I don't. So I just want to be sure. This is a painted lady. And once again, the top side versus next one, the bottom side looks very, very different.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I don't know much about the painted ladies. There's 2 kinds, the plain old painted lady and the American painted lady. It has something to do with the number of eye spots on the wing, but I forget what they are. One has 4 and I think one has 2, but you can go to your ID book and figure that out. What's interesting about the painted lady, it's one of the most widespread of butterflies. I think they actually go over the Rocky Mountains to California, which is not true of all butterflies. Okay, now maybe the next one is a Fritillary. Yes.
Yay.
Now, going back many, many, many decades when I was a kid, I had scarlet fever, which back in those days was a pretty serious illness. And I remember being home from school at least 2 weeks. And my mom read me a chapter in a story every day at 5 o'clock. And it was called The Girl of the Limberlost, a classic written by some Midwestern woman writer who I forget her name, over 100 years ago. Now, my dad was a Marine and he was not a reader, but when he was a kid in Louisiana, he said he read that book. And so my mom read it to me. And it was all about this 8th grade girl living in what is southern Illinois. The Limberlost is now a state park, by the way. And it was a swampy, woody area. And in those days in Illinois, you got through 8th grade. And then if you wanted to go to high school, you had to pay. They were poor. So, and she loved the butterflies. And so she made a collection of butterflies and moths that she sold to the school library, I think, or somebody. So she had money to go to school. Anyway, one of the treasures was the Luna moth, which I do not have a picture of, but it's a huge 4 or 5 inch moth that comes out at night, and it's pale green with lavender spots, absolutely beautiful. And I got hooked, built a butterfly net, chasing after butterfly. Anyway, that was a long time ago. And then many decades went by before, about 20 years ago, I got interested in butterflies and planted a small butterfly garden that was mainly a tallgrass prairie garden. And the Fritillaries showed up. So I forget who said it in some movie about something to do with baseball. If you build it, they'll come.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, whatever that
Field of
movie.
Dreams.
Okay, it's true. If you provide the restaurant and the plants that the eggs have to be laid on, and don't spray everything to death, and don't mow everything to 1 inch above the soil line, they will come. Amazing. So I had never seen Fritillaries before, but they showed up the second year. And they usually come in late July, in August. And I discovered that the Fritillaries, let me make sure I'm doing this right here. Right. The adults hatch out sometime in July, hang around for about a month. That's about the time span of the adult butterfly. It's only a month. They lay their eggs in September on violet leaves. I have lots of, I planted, violets are a weed, so be careful. I planted some in my lawn and now they're everywhere. But the Fritillaries love them. Then they hibernate over the winter as the caterpillar stage on the violets. And then hatch probably in July sometime. And then we have our beautiful Fritillary butterfly.
How big are they?
They're about, well, it depends. The ones I have are about 3 inches in diameter.
Pretty big.
Yep, there's several species. This might be a meadow one, which is a little smaller, but I don't think we had the great spangled. They're more to the south. So I just call it a fritillary, which is true, without saying specifically.
Mm.
You know, it's like, do you have a Shetland pony or do you have a Perching? They're all horses, right? Ponies are horses, right?
Well, they're small.
Yeah, I mean, they look very different, but they're
Right.
all the same Latin
Equine,
names. Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So same with the fritillaries. All righty. The other interesting thing about the fritillaries is in the summertime, they will do some northern migration. In other words, let's say the fritillaries I see in July and August, they might have hatched down somewhere in Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
But unlike the monarchs, they don't reverse that in the winter. They simply die after they've laid their eggs, if they live that long. Okay, 9 and 10 should have been the painted ladies. So somehow this got mixed up.
Mhm.
Let's see what's next. Now, let's pop to, this is a red Admiral because of the red-orange bands. Flip to the next one and then we can go back. And that's a white Admiral with a white band. Okay, let's go back. Once again, this is the same species, same Latin name, 2 names, but this one is the southern version of the Admirals. And New York State's about its northern edge. The other one, we can go to the other one now, the white Admiral is more of a Canadian part of the tribe. And once again, New York State is about where their boundary. So I have both in my garden,
Nice.
red and white Admirals. Okay, the next butterfly is one of the ones I think is most beautiful. And I always have to stop to think what the name is. It's a red spotted purple butterfly. Red spot, because it does have some red spots on its wings,
All right.
but it's this beautiful dark blue, light blue, iridescent color. Now, where I first saw this butterfly, I was on a hike with my friends Elwood and Margie down at, I think, Bull Run, a state park in the middle of PA. And we were on a woodland path following a creek. And all of a sudden, on the path, 4 perfect wings, like somebody had mounted them, and no body, no abdomen, no trunk, no head, no antenna, just 4 wings. And I said, and it was meticulous. It was exactly as if somebody had mounted them. And I said to Elwood, what's that? And he said, oh, the blue jays will catch one, but they don't want to eat the fuzzy scales. And they just clip the wings off and they drop right there. And then they take the body and go eat it. Oh, poor Rima doesn't like this aspect of nature. So anyway,
Yuck.
since then, I have seen only 2 over the years. And once again, they were more in the woods, my open woods, rather than out in the field. So I'm thinking, you know, some butterflies do hang out more in the woods than out in the meadow.
Are butterfly populations getting better or are they getting in decline?
As with everything in the world, except human beings,
Decline.
they're in decline. Because human beings are gobbling up the habitat and changing it. And we'll talk about that when we get to the monarchs, okay? And the blue carner butterflies. Okay, what's next? I think the monarch is next. Wait a second. That must be the undersides. Okay, we can go on. Aha, okay. Now, if anybody's interested in monarchs and their life story, I think the Fillmore Library here in Allegheny County, or maybe it's still available, an old book online. It's called Wings in the Meadow. And it's one of those, it was written by a science writer back, I don't know, maybe in the 70s, a while ago. And I read it a while ago, maybe 20 years ago. But it is, first of all, a great read. If you're interested in human beings and nature, read it. It's about an old man who lives all by himself up in Vermont, I think. And it's about Dana, which is part of the Latin name, I think, for the monarch butterfly, starting out in Florida in February or something. But basically, the story of the monarch is that until the 70s or 80s, we didn't know where they went. Most butterflies are residents. They don't travel, they don't migrate a lot, if at all. But the monarchs all disappeared. And people saw them headed south, southwest, but they didn't know where they were going. And then this professor with some of his, I think, grad students decided they would hop in their Jeeps and try and follow them, which I think is a great adventure. You know, who wants to spend grad school all inside, right? Let's hop in the Jeep with our sleeping bag and try and figure out where they're going. Well, it took quite a while, but they finally found their summer resort. And it was down in the ones from the East Coast.
Wait a minute, summer or winter resort? Winter resort, isn't it?
You're right.
Winter,
The winter resort.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a good thing Regina's here. Sometimes I get carried away and get my things mixed up. All right. Winter resort. It's, I think, at about 5,000. It's in the mountains of north central Mexico at about 5,000 feet elevation. And there's an evergreen forest there of, I don't know what they call it, specific type. And that's where they all go, whether it's billions or millions. And they kind of self-hibernate. There's other words besides hibernate, because they do flutter around. But basically they hang out in hordes in the trees for about 2 months. Then, let me think, maybe in January, and my guess is it might be a combination of temperature, but probably light change that affects something in their little brain that says, time to move north. And that overwintering hatch, that was born sometime in September, somewhere up here, say in my backyard in September, they went south with the migrating horde of monarch butterflies. And it took them about 2 months to get there. So if they left here, late September before the frost, by November, Thanksgiving, they're down there. They hang out for about 2-3 months, depending. And by middle of January or so, they start heading north. They usually get to, say, South Texas. That's where they lay their eggs. They mate and they lay their eggs, and then they die. And it's that, let's call it then the first hatch of the year, is there in the South. Those adult, and it takes about a month, lay the eggs, grow the caterpillar, do the pupae thing, make the adult butterfly. About a month altogether. And then the adults live about a month. It all depends on the temperature. The warmer it is, the quicker it happens. That first hatching then moves north, let's say into the Carolinas, does it all over again. And then the next one moves up into maybe Virginia or Maryland. So it's usually July 4th hatch at least before they get here to my yard. And then, and each one goes through the cycle.
So I didn't know that before.
Most people don't. They lay the egg.
I
then-
thought it was the same butterfly.
Yeah,
made
me
the whole
too.
trip.
Nope, it's the 5th hatch, let's say, that hatched sometime, I'm saying late August. And you see floating around in the goldenrod in early September. They're the ones that fly all the way south, and they're different. And once again, I think it's day length that triggers this. Their body chemistry changes. They don't lay eggs, and they fatten up, and that's the crew that goes back to Mexico to start it all over again.
So 5 generations.
Question,
Yes, Amanda,
sorry to interrupt,
that's okay.
but it's one creature, they make the trip, one creature makes the whole trip for the
Yep.
winter migration.
Yep,
And then it's 4 or 5 hatchlings that make the northern trip.
yes. So the butterflies we see here in Allegheny County, usually in July, are the, I don't know, great-grandchildren of the ones that hung out in Mexico for the winter.
Wow.
All right, let me think a minute here now. So I'm guessing it's light change and or temperature dropping. that signals the chemistry change in their bodies. They don't waste time laying eggs, and they're the ones that go all the way south. Now, a few years ago, nowadays, we don't have to hop in the Jeep like they did 50 years ago to follow them. They have very, 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 very light little tags they can put on their wings, and like bird bands. And a few years ago, there was a kid somewhere around Syracuse, I think, his class raised monarchs that last at the end of the year and banded them. And one of them came back. I forget where it was found, but they have the ID number on it. So I thought that was pretty exciting.
Wait a minute, it came back.
Well, they either they found it down, that it got all the way down to Mexico. Yeah, that's what I meant. Thank you, Regina. That one banded here managed to make it all the way back to Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Pretty.
you guys had some here a few years ago, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell that story towards
Yeah.
the end if
Okay.
we have time. Now, the interesting thing about two things about monarchs. I'm going to say 10 years ago, I'm not exactly sure. They came up with a new systemic spray that the plant absorbs the poison and it infiltrates the whole plant. And the farmers in the Midwest were using it extensively. And one of the weeds they were going after was milkweed. Now, monarchs are one of those creatures that through evolution has created a bond, a relationship with one particular plant. If that plant disappears, they disappear forever. And that's the milkweed, because the adults suck the nectar, they lay their eggs on it, and then the caterpillars eat the leaves. And I wish I had Sandy Rosner's pictures. Maybe we'll have to do that next time if we do this again. About 4 years ago, I had two milkweed plants. One was by my compost heap that just appeared, and the other was down by my pond. The one at the compost heap never got more than 1.5 feet tall, maybe this round, 18 inches? Wasn't very big. But the monarch had laid its caterpillars on that plant. And one day in, I forget, sometime in July, early August, I found 10 or 12, I forget now, caterpillars. They were real tiny, only about ½ inch long at that point on that one little plant. And I thought, well, this isn't going to work. The grocery store is going to run out. But I had a big plant down by the pond. So every day for 10 days, I took one off and brought it down to the pond and put it on the big milkweed plant. And there they happily lived and got longer and longer until they were, I don't know, almost 3 inches long, I think.
And they all survived, really?
They did till that point, and then I didn't look for 2 or 3 days, and then they were all gone.
Oh.
So I'm assuming they all crawled off, found a place to hang themselves and make a cocoon. So I'm hoping. All right, I got sidetracked there. So with all our spraying, we're in a sense, it's like if we went into all our grocery stores and sprayed everything, and then everybody bought the food, went home, ate it, and died. Really, that's what's happening. And the other thing is climate change. Now, these guys over millions of years, I'm sure it's been millions of years. If not, butterflies have been around a long time, I think. Double check it on the internet. Many millions of years. They evolved to hang out down there at roughly 5,000 feet, where if anybody knows, if you live in Hornell or if you live on the top of the hill here, the weather is different. Spring comes later up here and fall comes earlier up here. So as climate is changing, it's warming that band. And so what the Mexican, I think, government has done is instigated a new planting. They've gone 1,000 feet up the mountain and planted new forests.
Wow.
Which I think is great. However, this is not just a problem for butterflies. Think about our Southwest, Arizona, New Mexico. If anybody's been there, they know they have what are called island mountains. Separate ranges that are fairly small go up there. They go up to 7,000 to 9,000 feet about, and they're separated by desert. So certain animals and insects can't migrate from their mountain home further north. And so as climate changes warms the area and the heat levels rise up the mountain, eventually you get to the top of those lower mountains and they've run out of habitat and then they all die. So I don't know how high those mountains are where these guys are, but eventually if we, and we will, because human beings are short-sighted, they're going to run out of climate on those mountain ranges and then they'll die off. We won't have monarchs anymore.
Did you continue to get monarchs at your property after those?
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh yeah. I don't think monarchs are like birds. Some birds actually come back to the same tree to build their nest. I'm not, I don't know enough about it, but I don't think monarchs are that specific. All they need is that milkweed.
You still have milkweed at your house?
Uh-huh.
Your property?
Yep. Yep. Okay. Oh, I wanted to say something. Let's see, 1,000 feet. Oh, the last thing about monarchs. Going back to what Regina said many years ago, 20, I decided we'd make a butterfly garden here in front of the box of books. It's still there. And Cynthia Cully at the time bought, I think there was 6, I'm going to call them cocoons, which came in the mail, just like baby chicks in a box. And you set up some kind of cage for them with food and water, but they just basically hung there for, I don't know, a week or 2 or 3 before they hatched. And wouldn't you know, they hatched on a Saturday morning. Now, all I remember is one hatching. I don't remember if the others came later in the week or what, but I remember the one. So I came down. Now, Regina, Rima, help me. Who was the man that was involved? I think he just recently died, but he was in.
Gene.
Steiger?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not exactly certain, but 20 years ago, there was a man here, then in his 40s or maybe 50, who was very involved in the library. And I believe he still was up until recently, if this is the man.
Might have been Gene, yeah.
Okay. So he was here and I was here and maybe Jan Porter and whoever the librarian at the time was. And whenever butterflies crawl out of their cocoon, they're all wet and limp. And it takes them about an hour to dry out and they start flapping their wings and it pumps the blood into their veins to stiffen their wings so they can fly. So it had done that and it was in the cage and it was ready to be let loose. So he took it outside, so proud, and set it in the butterfly garden. Here you are, my dear, we made this just for you. And what did it do? I've told you this story, didn't I? It probably took off, flap, 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 up in the air and towards the intersection downtown here. And if it was Gene, I wish I had a picture of this or a video would have been better. A grown man actually running after this butterfly, yelling, "Come back, come back." Which only goes to show that people have an emotional attachment to butterflies for some reason.
Well, he helped raise it.
He helped raise it. Yeah.
Baby.
Yeah, it was his baby. Well, the other memory I have was, and I forget when I was a potter doing a craft show up at the Memorial Art Gallery in Rochester, and it was early September. And it was, you know, they had thousands of people come and I had set up, it was around 10 in the morning. They were just coming in and there was this yellow swallowtail down on the ground, obviously just getting adjusted. It was bright and sharp, no missing part, and it was having a hard time flying. So I kept telling people, "What? Don't walk on the butterfly." And along comes this, sorry guys, a hunk of a guy, just gorgeous, late 20s, with his little daughter. He must have been a football player. You could just tell. And they spot the butterfly, and he drops to his knee, and he sticks out his finger, and that swallowtail landed on his finger. You should have seen the look on his face and his little daughter's face. And so they carried it off and put it in a bush. But once again, doesn't matter who you are. You can be the jockiest jock or an older guy or whatever, little kid. Butterflies are fascinating. People are just intrigued by them. So let's see, I'm babbling on. So Wings in the Meadow, if you want to, it tells a story about one particular series of monarch butterflies that move north, and the old man captures it in his cabin, and the relationship then that they have and what happens to the butterfly at the end of the year. So monarchs, what's next? Is that might be the, oh no,
Ooh.
I don't have much to say about this one. It's a sulfur, an orange sulfur. There are several yellow sulfur butterflies that float around the garden. They're only about an inch and a half.
And you have that in your garden?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow. I've never
Well,
seen one around here.
I have later in the summer, I'm not sure it's this one, a really bright yellow one. So, okay, and the last one then is, and I only have a picture from the undersides with the 1, 2, 3, 4 dots on it. You can go. It's a wood nymph, and they're a butterfly that lives basically in the woods, at the edge of the woods. It'll come out into the garden, but it really likes to be kind of in the woods. And this is interesting. This one is on a flower, but they also eat grass. They must mean the seeds, and sedge, which is a, well, sedge is sedge.
They're kind of a grass. Right?
It looks like a grass, but it's not a grass. And it grows in swampy areas, either in the woods in dapple shade or out in the wet meadow. So, and they describe their flight. All butterflies fly differently as a sort of a dancing around kind of flight. All righty. That's probably the end of my PowerPoint, but I wanted to talk about, I don't have
It says there are
pictures.
2 more.
2 more? Let's see what they are.
Let's see.
Oh my gosh.
That's pretty.
That's great. You see, that somehow didn't get on my printed out copy. All right, good. Is that a monarch?
The wings look like they're shaped differently.
And what else is different?
The black bands.
The skinny little black band in the middle of the lower wings. This is a viceroy. It's an example of mimicry, which all sorts of animals, lizards, cats, zebras, well, not forget the cats and the zebras.
Chipmunks? No.
No, it's more like an insect and lower order, like lizards.
You know, frogs do that a lot. Certain frogs.
I don't know. I'm definitely not a frog expert. Anyway, according to Darwin's theory of evolution, the survival of the fittest, since the monarchs only eat milkweed, and if as a kid you ever taste milkweed, you know, kids are curious. It's very bitter. As a matter of fact, it's toxic. And so that is absorbed into the monarch's body. And the little baby birds flying around, oh, that looks good. It only does it once. The monarch doesn't taste good, and they don't do it again. So the monarchs have developed over time, not because they planned it, it happened, that they're relatively safe from birds. There must have been millions of years ago, the viceroy, somewhat similarly, but not as perfectly identical. And so let's say it always goes back to sex. If you have a male and a female mating, the offspring always have a variation in the theme. So let's say you have 10 little baby butterflies, and some are more orange or have slightly different band colorings. The bird's gonna eat the ones that look like viceroys,
Right.
and probably avoid the ones that are beginning to look more like monarchs. So the next generation, we have less originals left and more that look like the monarch. And over time, you wind up with something that looks quite like the monarch. So that's called mimicry. And it's really an interesting theory. Okay, then I must have, if the last one must be the Carner blue then. Yes.
Ooh.
Now, the Carner blue, if you're into butterflies, is famous because it's almost extinct. We always love what is rare. We love diamonds. We don't like pebbles on the beach, right? Right? Okay, so the Karner blue, originally, its habitat was all around the Great Lakes. And it liked, once again, like the monarch, a specific habitat. It needed lupin flowers, which grow in sandy, acid soil. Of course, 200 years ago, there was a lot of that. Now it's a lot of subdivisions, Rochester to Buffalo, nothing but houses, right? Towns, villages, farms. So most of their habitat got changed for human use. And so we have very few Karner blues, and they're a beautiful little butterfly. And so they actually have a fan club, groupies that love them and are trying to either buy up plots of land so that they can recreate their habitat or keep the few places that are left. One thing they try and do is trees will want to grow in. So they go once a year and they trim out the saplings or pull up the year-old whatevers so that it stays more open, sandy, acid for these Karner blues. Okay, I need to go back to my notes now. What time is it? I have a feeling we rambled on and on.
It
12:17.
Oh, good. Thank you. All righty. We can leave that up if we want. All right.
Okay.
Okay,
The
Regina.
monarchs, do they eat swamp milkweed just as good as the other milkweed?
Yes, there are several species of milkweed. I'm glad you brought that up, Regina, because as anybody knows, any plant that has weed in the title is a weed. And the regular milkweed, as a matter of fact, Cynthia Colley in her driveway, in the cracks in her cement driveway, had some milkweed growing up. So we dug some up and we planted it out here in the butterfly garden. And the next year, that one plant had spread 5 feet. And I thought, no, we're not doing this. And I pulled it all up.
Oh,
However, if you're interested, the swamp milkweed, which
small.
has a pink flower, which I like pink, is much more self-contained. So if you're going to put one in your garden, do the swamp milkweed, not the regular weedy milkweed.
I've grown 2 from seeds, but I don't know
Okay.
what they were. I don't know what kind they were.
Probably the regular one. Keep an eye on it. All righty, mating. These are a few topics. I'm going to leave that picture up for a bit.
Okay, super.
Okay. Pheromones. Why do women spend a fortune? Well, women who are rich spend a fortune on perfume because it attracts certain odors, the male of the species. And that's very true with butterflies. But I don't know a great deal about that. But the one thing I did read and I thought was kind of funny, those red admirals, they will do what is called perching. In other words, if you have a bamboo stick 4 feet high out in your garden or any kind of perching place, the red admirals, the males, will sit on those and keep track of what's going by so that if the female floats by, he can go chase her. But if a male comes into his territory, he'll chase it off. Just like the male robins will chase another male robin off. And I read once a butterfly lover who had 1 or 2 perches in his garden, and that butterfly would chase him off too. Which I thought, oh, that's weird. He doesn't look like a butterfly. But anyway. And then very briefly, and I mean really briefly, I'm dying to go into the whole thing, but it's just a little too much, but you can look it up if you want, is color. Now, science is amazing. And I often scratch my head and said, how did they figure that out? But I accept the responsible researchers connected to responsible institutions, not the quacks out there who think they know stuff and don't. Butterflies not only see what we see in color, Roy, G, Bev, red, the rainbow, but at the far end of that, past the violet, they see ultraviolet as well. Now we need a special light to see that, right? My mother had a mineral collection and a black light, and you turn the black light on and all of a sudden those minerals just glow all sorts of beautiful colors that you can't see normally. So beyond the violet, they can see the ultraviolet. And what's so interesting is, let's say we look at a daisy or a lily. Now, once again, I'm not sure these are a perfect example. They're just a possible example. They are ray flowers. They have a center in the middle, usually yellow. That's a little pollen, stamen anthers, and what's the female part called? Botany is not my main point. And we see the white petals. But the butterfly sees an airplane landing strip, because down the center of that white petal is an ultraviolet strip or two or three. And it just zeroes them in to the center where the food is. It's like those yellow arches. So
So if we got a daisy and put it under an ultraviolet light, we'd be able to see that too?
I don't know. We should try that, or we
Yeah.
should research it online.
Okay.
And I'm not sure daisies have that, but many flowers do. And it's not just the white ones.
Oh,
Okay.
probably lilies. Lilies.
I would guess, but I don't, once again, I didn't do the research to get a list of those flowers that are like that. It also says that the butterflies can see many shades of green. You could have fun sometime, just sit there and think, how many shades and tints of green do I know? You know, chartreuse, blue green, silver green, dark green. And the more you look, the more you can differentiate, right? Come up with more names. Well, the butterfly knows lots of greens, but it seems that, once again, in lab testing, they prefer lavender and violet flowers or color. Whereas hummingbirds, Regina, what color?
Red.
Red. They seem to be attracted to the red. And I read somewhere recently, bees like blue, shades of blue, and I didn't know that.
And I've heard hornets like yellow. Or
Oh,
wasps.
really?
Hornets are washed like yellow.
So you know we're yellow. All right, good to know. All righty, and we don't really have time, and it's pretty complicated about how we see the color in the butterflies. Maybe if I run sometime in the future and I have 10 minutes at the end, we'll do it, but not today. All right, very quickly. And what you're going to have to do now, guys, is basically do the research. Go online, find a reputable, that was the word I was looking for, source. Don't do WikiLeaks. Do the Cornell Cooperative Extension or any, Cornell is an agricultural school. They've spent over 100 years doing research and studying it. And I always use poor Aunt Martha. She hung her soap on the apple tree one year and the deer didn't eat the tree. Oh, wow, I've got a new way to keep the deer off the tree. And I kind of like saying, well, you were lucky one year, Aunt Martha. But to be sure about that, we need 100 Aunt Marthas in 100 different situations with 10 years worth of hanging soap in their
Oh, there's
trees
somebody out there.
to see if it works.
Yeah.
All right. And only then can you say soap will keep the deer from eating your apple tree.
Right.
Right. So go online and find, but I'm going to list off a few plants. And I think the main thing to realize, butterflies, if you don't count the mourning cloaks, who pop up every now and again in the middle of winter, usually April through early October, just before the frost to frost and a little beyond. So you need to have something there all 7 months to provide food and a place to lay the eggs all spring, summer long. So here are a few things. Now, many of us live at the edge of town or in the country, and so we're lucky. Out in the wild field or meadow, I'm just going to list the names, and I'm going to have Melanie sometime this coming week put this list online on our website under the Grow Your Own section, so you don't have to copy it all down now. So I'm just going to read it off roughly in the order that they bloom, starting in late June. Yarrow, black-eyed Susans. We all know what Queen Anne's lace looks like. And then later in the summer, asters and that what everybody thinks gives them hay fever, but doesn't, the goldenrod. That's not the bad guy. Alrighty, in your garden, Phlox of any kind. There are many species of phlox, from the low-growing moss phlox to the garden phlox in the summer that stands 2-3 feet high. Chives in your herb garden, and lavender, and borage, monarda, cornflower, thyme, leaster, and cardinal flowers. These are all lovely flowers that bloom from, what's the earliest ones here? Let me think. My chives are just done blooming, so June through October. Then there's plant food that's out there in the wild, trees and shrubs. Evidently, the blue Azures, which sort of look like this Carner blue, they love any kind of dogwood or wild cherry. Now,
Those are the early bloomers.
yes, those would be early, and by dogwood around here, what we think of dogwood, that beautiful white tree in your front yard, we were always too cold for the dogwoods to bloom here, to be safe. But there are a lot of shrubby dogwoods. Red twig dogwood is a shrub that's already here, and a few others. You have to look them up online, and they would all work just fine. Where are we? Oh, and then if you have a larger woods, black cherry, which is a 40, 50, 60-foot tree in the woods, or aspen, our yellow sulfurs that we saw and our red spotted purples, they use them for plant food. What else? Our morning cloak, which pops up sometimes in the winter, crazy butterfly, willows and aspens and birch trees, and also those admirals and the viceroy, like those. So anyway, and of course in your garden, oh yes, parsley and carrots. That black, beautiful swallowtail, they're black with white spots, I think the body. They love your carrots. And once I found one, munch on one of my carrots in the carrot row. But I knew that it also liked, let me think. Queen Anne's lace, I think, is in the same
Yes,
family.
That's
So,
right.
and of course I have lots of Queen Anne's lakes like 20 feet away. So off it came from my carrot and out to the wild Queen Anne's lace patch, which I'm sure it was perfectly happy.
Yeah,
It's like eating hamburgers from McDonald's or from Burger King.
yeah.
Okay. And the Fritillary loves the violets. Is that, now you said you weren't sure you could find the edible flowers. Do we have 5 minutes for edible flowers or not?
No.
No? Well, we will talk about edible flowers then. So
28.
28 minutes? We got,
Yeah, 12:28 is the time.
Well, I have to find pictures first and figure out. how
okay,
to put
never
them on
mind,
here, so
never mind.
I'm
We'll just
including that.
postpone this to maybe when we talk about companion planting in another month or so, we'll bring up the edible flowers. Now, guys, whoever's listening out there, don't just go out and pick a flower or the leaves and eat it, because once in a while you'll get really sick. And once in a rare while, you might die. So research it on a reputable spot or get a great book out of the library on the topic. And just one example, violets. When I was a kid, that's one thing I remember. My mother once took the violets and the leaves. You can do both. Put the leaves in your salad. She whipped up an egg white, half and half with water. So whatever, a tablespoon of egg white, tablespoon of water, whipped it all up, dipped the violets in, and then sprinkled sugar over them. And it sugared or glazed, and then she dried them. And they were beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think she made a birthday cake or something with some kind of white creamy frosting and plopped the violets on top. Or the leaves can go in your salad. There are lots of flowers like that. The borage, which is blue, very beautiful, put them in your ice cube tray and they freeze up, blue, little starry flowers in the ice cube, put them in your gin and tonics. Just kind of neat, right? All right. What's next time? I think bugs. I think we have to talk about what kind of bugs are out there. And we didn't do that, did we?
Mm-mm.
No, that's
No,
right. I
haven't
didn't
done
think we
bugs
did.
yet.
So at least next time we'll talk, which is what now? Beginning of July already.
Sometime July,
So
yeah.
the bugs will be coming if they're not already there. And I only have experience with 4 or 5 kinds, but we can talk in generality and we can deal with those 4 or 5 very common kind.
All right.
Thanks for everybody
Super.
who's listening that I
July
don't
1st.
know. And Amanda, thanks for tuning in. You have any
Thank you so
questions?
much. This is wonderful. Can you send us a list of the plants that you listed at the end?
Yes, I will. Now, how shall we do this? Put it on our webpage, where it's supposed to be.
Thank you.
Okay, Regina, I'll
Bye,
see
Regina.
Yeah.
you. What, Regina, wait, because of the star party.
Oh, yeah.
Hang on. Hang on, Amanda. Do you know how to reach? Obviously you do on the web. You talk because I don't have a computer. I don't-
Okay, Amanda, you can just email us at alfred@stls.org and ask the question. And Mary Lou will leave me a list and I'll write you out a list. I'll email you a list.
Thank you.
Did you get that? That alfred@stls.org. It stands for Southern Tier Library System.
Wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, and normally we do have a web page, and on that web page under events. Yep. Okay, she has to go. We have to sign off. Amanda, see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Who's
Bye,
that?
Christian.
Oh, hi, Christian.
Hi, I was listening the whole time.
Oh, all
Uh,
right.